Guys over at Warhammer Central, we need to talk. Dude, where's my FAR? Now, one of the great things about Warhammer Underworlds is with every expansion release, the meta does evolve, in theory. Now, one way that the guys over at Warhammer do kind of keep on top of that is by releasing on all of their games, and not just Underworlds, releasing erratas, FAQs, and for Warhammer Underworlds, a Forsaken and Restricted list. Whenever these have been released, it kind of shakes up the game, it gets rid of overpowered builds, and is a nice buzz about the community because the game is being supported and the game is kind of moving in a more enjoyable direction. Now, obviously, the world's batshit mental at the moment. COVID has kind of stopped any competitive gaming in the flesh, but they're still releasing expansions really quickly and kind of on top of each other. So, like in the past month alone, we've had a new starter set, we've had the Crimson Court, we've got the new Orc Warband being released shortly, and 2 card packs as well. So there's so much content kind of being released for the game, but the support doesn't really seem to be there at the moment because it does feel like that there needs to be a new FAR list, as it's been months for a FAR list, and it's nearly been a year since the last FAQ, which is pretty bad. As I mentioned, it's not entirely all Warhammer's fault. COVID, no one playing in the flesh. They do say this is the ultimate competitive miniatures game. They're not really giving the nod to the fact that people are playing online. So in their minds, there's probably no reason for one, but there is. And these are going to be my suggestions to be put onto the FAR list. Now, with the season coming to a close soon, a few of these will rotate out anyway, but probably not for a few months. And some of these things probably need to be put on the list now because of kind of how they affect the meta in general. But we'll start off with the big bad at the moment that people want to see something happen to, and that is Ferocious Resistance. Ferocious Resistance, you choose a friendly fighter, roll a magic dice for each of the chosen fighter's wound counters, and you chuck an additional magic dice if that fighter has 1 or more hunger counters, and for each lightning bolt, heal 1 fighter. This card, when it pulls off, is utter filth, and you can just completely heal up a tanked up Mollog or Crusher or Ogre. And I can understand like the theory behind the card. It is a good card and it is a useful card, but it's really overpowered with certain warbands. Now, they can just flat out ban it because of how much of an advantage it gives those warbands. They can restrict it, but I don't think that will be a problem. I don't think that will solve the problem. So either a flat out ban, or they could errata the card. Personally, I think if they added for each crit, take another wound. So I think that would kind of add that kind of risk and reward. I guess I would have to say for every crit, add a wound before healing. So there is the risk of death from Ferocious Resistance. Would people then kind of look at that card and think, oh, it's too much of a risk of taking that now? Or if you're like me and you love chaos, that's great. It's a good gamble and it's a fun card. It's a fun card. But the more competitive folks out there probably will think that's not worth that risk. But Ferocious Resistance, the obvious first choice there. Sticking with universals, we'll delve into the upgrades of the Arena Mortis. First up, the Crown of the Dead. We've already got one of the the Arena Mortis relics. One of the gauntlets is already restricted, but Crown of the Dead as well, I feel, should be restricted. Not necessarily overpowered, but card draw, I think, it's a bit too easy to score with so much card draw going on. I understand as a mechanic, it is important for the game as it can help you along, but I don't really think that you should be easily scoring glory for it. More on that later. But Crown of the Dead, I think, should be popped on the restricted list. Next up, deserved confidence. The Voltron meta is still really strong. I did a video about a Mollog deck that I used that was to do with the Voltron meta, and that was in November of last year. So it's kind of been, is it fair to say, an issue? But it's been a relevant, like, deserved confidence and just piling everything onto one guy to turn them into a mega boss has been a thing now for nearly 6 months. And I think deserved confidence needs to go on the restricted list. It's just too strong. It's just such a strong card. It's very good for Arena Mortis. I can understand why it's in there, but I think now its time has come. Maybe even flat out ban it. You can still make a mega boss, but I don't think a mega boss should be as powerful as deserved confidence makes it. If you're not familiar, if +1 wound and not being able to be driven back, +1 move after 5, and then basically, or more or less, auto hitting, getting an innate hammer or swords after 9. It's just too strong now, in my opinion. There's so much that complements it even more now. Next up, moving swiftly on, I mentioned card draw to the end. It's getting rotated out. I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see another version of this potentially. They do love the card draw mechanic. I think there may be some sort of, even if it's a third end phase card, maybe, I think they need to come back, be a bit more relevant. But to the end, just flat out ban it. There's no way of stopping it. If there was a card that, if you were able to put cards from your opponent's pool back into play, like their cards that they had already played, and put them back into their deck, then it's not an issue. But to the end, it's just too easy. I've mentioned it before. It used to go in all of my decks for that very reason. But it's just, there's more fun ways to play the game, I think, now. But ban it. Get rid. The next two, I'm gonna squish them together. They're two cards that are from the starter set. Now Primacy is sort of alive and kicking, and we've got the new orcs on the horizon as well. I just think there's going to be so much kind of Primacy shenanigans. So Surge of Aggression and Awesome Predator are both cards that I think should be on the restricted list now. So Surge of Aggression is a surge, and you score it if a friendly fighter's successful attack action with a damage characteristic of 4 up goes off, or if you get the Primacy token. There's so many ways of getting it now, which is great. It's kind of what I wanted the Primacy token to be, but it's just too easy now, and that's just a far too easy glory to spend. You can play a ploy and get it. You can move and get it. You get it from a kill. You can get it from rolling a crit on defense. It's just very easy to score, and I think Surge of Aggression should be restricted for that reason. And then again, Awesome Predator, if you have the Primacy token, or if someone has a damage characteristic of 4+. Again, something quite easy to do now. And I think, while not necessarily overpowered, restricting this card just means you might have to go elsewhere looking for something a bit more interesting and not played so much. Next up, another surge. It's one that's going to be rotating out at the end of the season, but at the moment, it's quite powerful just because it's so easy to score. Gathered Momentum. So if you score your second surge objective card in a phase, or If a friendly fighter makes a charge action and ends that action 5 or more hexes from the hex in which they began the action. Getting up to 5 speed now is really easy. And I mean, there's so many fighters, there's quite a few fighters that have it built in now as well. So I think that should, because we have cover ground and we have winged death, because there's two cards that are already kind of based around a similar thing, but are a bit tougher to score because you need to be up to 6, which again isn't impossible. It's still quite easy to get up to 6. But gathered momentum, I think, needs to go because now savage speed is a thing. It's really easy to score most warband. I don't think there's any 2-speed warbands. Other than the skellies and maybe the dwarves, but even then you're not taking gather momentum if that's the case. But I think gather momentum needs to be restricted, particularly while there are +6 movement cards out there. And my final universal, not necessarily because it's an overpowered card, but it's pretty much everywhere. Show of Force. 3 or more friendly fighters are in enemy territory, or 1 or more friendly fighters each have 3 or more upgrades. I think it just benefits. It just really benefits that kind of hyper aggressive Voltron style of play. It is quite easy to score. Again, it's a card that's going to be getting rotated out, so it being restricted now isn't necessarily a terrible thing because people will start to look at other kind of sort of cards now going forward. But yeah, I think that's a pitch for me for it to be restricted. And the last bunch of cards are 3 warband specific cards. The first one, Got It Boss for Morok's Crushers. Score this immediately after an activation if your warband holds 1 or more objectives in enemy territory. It's just really easy to score for those guys. They're a hyper-aggressive warband. We shouldn't be scoring glory based on just sitting on an objective. Yeah. Not much else to say about that, really. But I think that should be restricted for those guys. Massive bulk. I know Crogthorn has taken a bit of a battering when it comes to these type of things, but I don't think he needs to get any, or at least make it tougher for him to be such a big old brute. Apologies if this annoys any of the folks out there who play Rock the Ogre regularly, but I think this needs to be restricted. And finally, this one is for Rippers, loaded with plunder. So score in the end phase if 1 or more friendly fighters have 3 or more upgrades. And the only reason I say restrict this one is because it's too gory. Where any other card like this just seems to be 1. And it's such a big kind of thing because you're doing this with Rippers anyway. You've only got 3 fighters. You're going to have someone with 3 or more upgrades. So I think it's just... The only reason I say restrict this is because it's 2 glory. If it was 1 glory, fine. But because it's 2, it's a very big advantage that they have. So that's my suggestions for the FAR list. Will we see one? I mean, I was expecting to see one when they released the starter set and the essentials cards, because some of those cards were restricted before, and we've not technically had an update to say that they're championship legal, although they have kind of said in articles and things that they are, but like the documents haven't been updated. We've got a ton of cards coming out over the next fortnight, and 2 new warbands to come as well. So I would really love to see a FAR list. It will really shake things up. I know a lot of the kind of tournaments and things that are happening are introducing their own. The Straight Out Shadespire guys have done it. The Vassal guys have said that they won't do it, potentially won't do another tournament until there is one, which would be a massive shame. But what do you think? Do you agree with any of these? Do you think I'm full of it and want to add some more or take some of those off? But I'd be really interested to kind of hear. Everyone has an opinion on this, so yeah, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. But yeah, feel free to keep an eye out for some more videos. Apologies, things have not been as kind of regular as I would have liked. Gets in the way sometimes. So, yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for hearing my rambles. Keep an eye on the channel. Some more stuff coming soon. But yeah, all the best. Stay safe and see you soon.